Welcome, welcome, welcome 3 times in a row. We're back with Dr. Stephen Perry discussing how the underrepresentation of black-on-black crime affects the African-American community.
So one thing that you had discussed earlier is that, you know, it's not like there's only these incidents of white cops killing black unarmed teenagers. Right. There's a violence problem in general. And so I'm curious to know, in your opinion, why do you think the black community is more vocal when these incidents like what happened in Ferguson happen, where there's a white cop and a black teenager, rather than when black on black crime happens? Because
it plays into long-held stereotypes, and there are too many opportunists who come into communities such as Ferguson and use it as an opportunity to move forward their own political agenda, as opposed to looking at the overall problem, seeing this as an opportunity to say, hey, all life is valuable, and we should organize at the same level when literally hundreds of children are being shot in other communities. We need to do a better job of this. Those of us who care about our young people understand that this is not okay, that any one of our young people are murdered. On the same token, every parent who's lost a child feels like their child is the most important child.
Absolutely.
You know, I look at this like it's an epidemic in our society. So how is it we have that kind of conversation to sort of start a solution about the epidemic?
Well,
you know,
one of the reasons why we have the level of murder that we have is because so many of our young people don't feel like humans. And one of the reasons that they don't feel like they're humans or full members of the society is because their educations are terrible. Their schools are terrible, I meant to say. And if you think of what education does, it enlightens us. If you think about every image of God in every religion, there's a sense of light that comes around that. And that sense of enlightenment is a sense of humanity. And when you feel enlightened, you tend to feel like you're more a part of the conversation of the community. You rarely see people with a master's degree or a PhD running around gunning down people on weekends. It just doesn't happen often. And so what we need to do is to fully engage in the conversation around what's not happening in our schools, why so many, specifically African-American young men, are giving up on school because they feel like school has given up on them. School or the experience of education is a way to feel whole. And we're not making young people feel whole, and as a result, we keep ending up here.
You know, when rioting occurs, such as it did in 1992, actually, I was in LA during that riot, which was
the Rodney
King beating. Yeah. How do we explain those activities or what might happen? It's like, you know, if you go on Twitter, if you're looking on social media, everyone's preparing for the worst because of Ferguson right now. So how do we have that kind of conversation and address?
Well, you know, it's interesting. Chuck D and Public Enemy had predicted through Burn Hollywood Burn that if you keep making people angry and you keep pushing down their emotions and keep making them, you keep oppressing them, they're going to rise up. Absolutely. And so we have to respond to this oppression differently. It's anger, I get it, but it's absurd for you to go from being a protester to a criminal. It makes no sense for you to put yourself in harm's way to bring explosives to what should be a demonstration. Because criminals, unfortunately, become part of these conversations, and they make it bad for everybody. We need to make sure that the criminal element does not participate in this, and the overwhelming majority of the people who are there who have a genuine cause are the ones whose purpose comes to the fore, as opposed to the fools who go out there and do something stupid like throw a rock or a bottle at a police officer and make them lose their minds, because they're trying to get home to their kids too. They're not trying to die tonight. So we need to make sure that we correct those individuals who are going to come out there and make it bad on everybody else. Because usually it's just a 1 or 2 people who have no good sense, who turn something that should have been just a reasonable protest into something unfortunate.
So what advice then, I'm asking you, so then what exact clear-cut advice could we give some viewers that could be tuning in now on if they happen to be in Ferguson, you know, and they're thinking about what's the preemptive, you know, response to what the verdict might.
Well, we've marched the soles of our shoes raw. We've done the marching thing. We've done the protest thing. What are the policies that you want to change? What is it you exactly want to see differently? It's not just about give us more money or give us community centers. We've fallen for that okie doke too many times. We need to look at more global solutions. We need to look at things that are going to stick. Again, giving children access to quality education from the time.
Transfers to our youth about the education.
It has, and making sure that the education doesn't stop there, because unfortunately in communities such as these, you'll find that it's not just the young people who are not educated, it's the grown people. And so you can't have an uneducated population and expect to feel safe. If you want to create a weapon, take away the education from a young man, and he will become a weapon.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, I actually had the privilege, I would say, of going to Ferguson for a few weeks in August when all of this happened. And, you know, it's really interesting what you were saying because, you know, in the beginning, it was really the people in the community who were protesting, and you really sensed this tension that had been there for so long. And this incident really ignited everybody to stand up and to speak out about it because they felt like a spotlight was on their community, the national, the international spotlight. But you also saw a lot of people hijacking the protest, as you kind of mentioned.
A couple clowns come in there and they take everything away from
making
just like
their own agenda.
You know, whether it's the political clown show that comes out there for people who want to stand in front of a camera and act as if they're doing something that they're not, or it's the other clowns who want to come and do something that's dangerous.
Absolutely. And one thing I want to point out, and you know, you mentioned this in the beginning of the segment, that you know, when you talk to the young men that you work with, you always tell them to remain calm, stand down. But you had your own incident with the police.
I know, recently.
Multiple.
Yeah. I mean, how do you remain calm when something like that happens?
I'm built the same way. I'm built the same way as my kids. Everything that goes through their heads goes through mine. All the things that they want to do, I want to do.
So you've been targeted by the police, would you say, because of the color of your skin?
I believe so. I believe because I didn't do what it was that they pulled me over to say I did. So, and in the most recent time, I mean, I have a doctorate in education. I help people's children all over the country in different parts of the world. I'm not a threat in that sense.
So how did you stay calm when something like that happened?
It was very difficult. I said nothing. I'll be honest with you. As I'm sitting there with my family, this clown is talking over my wife and my kids are in the back seat. He's freaking everybody out. And the man in me wants to reach across and harm this man. Like, he's not a cop to me at that point. He's just a man who's being disrespectful. But in my mind, I recognize that's not going to end well. It's not going to end well. So I don't want people to think that in order to stand down, you need to be some sort of pacifist who believes deeply in the law and the righteousness of what this man is doing.
Standing down, you're really protecting yourself.
That's the only way to get home.
You're almost protecting yourself from the law, through the law.
And it's sad that it has to get to that level, right? And what's so interesting about all of this is how common it is. Because it happened to you, and it actually even happened to our next guest.
Yes, it did.
Who's going to be talking to us about, he's, you know, almost qualified for the Olympics, and he on his way to the studio, to this show, got pulled over, and he was almost late in joining us.
My dad was pulled over driving a Rolls Royce in Beverly Hills back in, you know, the early 80s.
I'm confident of that.
And to people,
you do know it is against the law to be black and rich, right? You've seen that, right?
It's unbelievable. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Perry. This was such a great conversation, and I think it's so important for everybody who has kids to really understand how to talk about this with children.
Well, thank you for taking the time to give the topic the time that it deserved.
We appreciate it. Well, up next, Ed Lovelace and I get fast and furious. Well, maybe not furious, but definitely speed is of the essence. Stay tuned for more Arise and Shine.
Excellent.